But I now turn to our speakers from Bertelsmann Stiftung. Thiess Petersen, would you like to introduce your famous study and tell us a bit about how things have been going for the last 20 years?
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity to present our study. Yes. Well, this is a topic for another panel. Thank you very much for the invitation and opportunity to present our studies. In our project, Global Economic Dynamics, we are dealing with international trade. And one basic assumption of our entire project is the assumption or the deep belief if we have an increase in economic integration within several countries, then those will have a positive impact on the growth rate in all countries. So when I talk about growth, economic growth, I'm always talking about an increase in real GDP, this is gross domestic product, or real GDP per capita. Now, just some reasons for these assumptions. Why do we believe in the growth effects of the deeper integration? There are many reasons. I just want to tell some. First of all, we think if we have a deeper economic integration between several countries, then we have lower tariffs, lower barriers to trade. If we have lower barriers to trade, we have lower cost of imported goods. If we have lower cost of imported goods, we have lower prices in the country, and thus the purchasing power of a given income is rising, and so people have more money to spend for domestic goods and services. And the second thing, if we have more integration and, of course, less barriers to trade, then we have more exports, and this is positive for all the economies that are able to export goods and services to other countries. And we have some other reasons for this. For example, we have what economists call economies of scale. If companies produce for a larger market, they can reduce their costs. And of course, we have, due to higher level of integration, more competition among companies. And if we have more competition, we have more technological change, which is reducing costs once again. So, in the last year, we published 2 studies dealing with the growth effects of the deeper economic integration. In March last year, we published the globalization report, and there we analyzed the growth effects of an increasing globalization for 42 countries. And in July last year, we published our European single market study, and there we studied the impact of an increase in European integration on economic growth. Now, some remarks on the method of the studies. The studies were conducted by our partner Prognos. This is a company based in Switzerland, Basel, and Munich. Now, probably the most important thing is if we talk about growth effect of European integration, we need to measure European integration. And in order to do so, we work with an existing index. This is the European Union Index developed by Jörg König and Renate Ward from the University in Göttingen. We make some changes, some different sources, and we enlarge the period of time, but more or less we work with their index. And now to get a feeling about the philosophy of this index, if we have an increase in economic integration between 14 countries, then there are 3 things that should happen. First of all, we assume that economic cross-border transactions between these countries increase. And these interactions refer to trade in goods, trade in services, trade in capital, and labor mobility. So we simply try to find out, is there an increase in interactions between the 14 countries we're looking at. Next thing is, if we have an increase in economic integration, we assume that the core macroeconomic indicators should have more or less the same level. So we look at 6 indicators which are important for macroeconomic, and we simply ask how close is the value of one country to the average of remaining 13 countries. And if the value is quite close, then we say there is a high level of integration of this country. And then certainly we think if 14 countries form a common market, we think that the changes in some important indicators should be more or less the same. That is, if we have an increase in growth in one country, then let's say 1%, then we assume that the growth rates in the other countries should be more or less 1%. So this is what we have done. And now all these indicators were combined to one index, and this index ranges from 0, which means very low integration, and 100. And to reduce complexity, I just want to focus on some countries, 4 countries. First of all, the yellow line, this is Germany. I took Germany because Germany had the largest increase in European integration between 1992 and 2012. There was a plus of about 27 index points. Denmark, red line, had the second largest increase in European integration. There was a plus of about 23 points. Then you see the dotted black line, this is Greece. Well, you can see Greece made some progress in European integration between 1992 and 2009, but then we have the Lehman crisis with all the economic disaster for Greece, and since then there's a sharp drop in the European integration of Greece. And finally, because at least I understood the word Thatcher, UK. UK is the broken green line, and here you can see at the beginning of the period of time we are looking at, there is a major step of de-integration of the UK because the United Kingdom left the European currency center. So this is the way how we, or how our partner measure the level of economic European integration. And in the next step, we try to find out, is there a statistical correlation between changes in the values of this index and changes in the value of the growth rate of the GDP. And this is done by regression analysis, and I'm not going into any details, I just want to present the result. And the result is the following. On an average, that is, if we take a look at all 14 countries and all 21 years, we can see if we observe an increase in the value of the index by 1 point, we can on average observe an increase in the growth rate of real GDP per capita by 0.08 percentage points. So in the last step, we made a comparison. We compared the actual development of real GDP in all countries, and then we compared the economic reality to a hypothetical situation. And in this hypothetical situation, we assume that the level of European integration remains at the level of the year 1992 for all other years. And maybe this figure describes our approach, and by the example of Denmark. First of all, if you look at the upper black line, you can see this is the development of real GDP in Denmark between 1992 and 2012. If we remind, we're working with euro and real GDP, that means everything is calculated in prices of the year 2005, so there is no inflation in these numbers. Then the bottom black line indicates or describes the hypothetical development of GDP per capita in Denmark if there had been no further integration into the European Union. And then you can see the red area. The red area simply describes the entire gains in real GDP per capita in Denmark between 1992 and 2012. And if you sum up all these numbers, you can see there's an increase of about 10,000 euros per person. Now we have these kind of figures for the remaining 13 countries of the European Single Market Study, and we have these figures for the 42 countries of our globalization reports, and in all cases the red line is positive, the red area is positive. So next thing what we made, we took the entire income gain and divided it by the 21 years, and then we came to the result already mentioned. If we take a look at the economic gains, you can see Denmark is the winner. On average, between 1992 and 2012, each inhabitant of Denmark had a larger GDP by about 500 euros. United Kingdom, well, this is due to the fact that they have the major step of the integration at the beginning of the period of time. So next thing what we did, we calculated the numbers for the entire economy. Now, due to the fact that the countries under review differ in sizes, it doesn't make too much sense just to look at the absolute income gains. So we took the entire gains in GDP between 1992 and 2012 and divided them by the GDP in 1992. And you can see if we order the countries according to this criteria, Germany was first and then Denmark second. And you can see for Denmark, on an average, each year between 1992 and 2012, the GDP of the Danish economy was about 2.7 billion euros larger due to the economic integration. So, the central conclusion of our study is economic integration, European integration had a positive impact on economic growth in all countries. And if we just not looking back but into the future, I'm pretty sure if we want to increase economic growth and employment in Europe, promoting economic integration in Europe is one promising way. Now, unfortunately, if you remember the method I described at the beginning, it is difficult to derive concrete recommendations for action because we did not analyze the reasons for the growing integration. So we don't know what is the key driver of integration. Why is such an increase in integration in Denmark? This is simply not possible with the data we make. Nevertheless, I dare to make 3 conclusions. First of all, we should try to complete the single market. The single market works pretty well when we're talking about goods, but there's still some room of improvement when we talk about trade and services. Secondly, we should try to increase cross-border mobility of labor. And last but not least, and this is probably the core question for the entire Eurozone, the question, what can we make in a country with a weak economic situation? How can such a country regain international competitiveness? It has no currency of its own, so that it cannot regain competitiveness by devaluating your own currency. So these are some core questions, and I'm very happy that I'm going to answer them because this is part of the panel. Nevertheless, I'm deeply convinced if we want to increase GDP, growth, and employment in Europe, we need more, but not less Europe. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much. This gave us an insight into the way you have calculated. It gave us also, I think, convincingly, we'll see in the panel, the argument that more integration actually leads to higher economic growth. And therefore, you can begin to ask yourself, what does it really help to do all these growth packages at national level? Would it be better actually to invest this money in jointly? And I think this is also what Mr. Høegh has said. This investment plan, this is not just about the EU money. Everybody is invited to contribute for the common European cost. And let's see politically how possible this is. I'm pretty certain that there will be some doubts about the study as well. There are always. And I know that we've had a quite harsh discussion in Germany about this as well. Let's see if we get one here. Can I invite the panel members to come up? Andreas, who are going to defend the Bertelsmann Foundation now? Position, Professor Philipp Schröder, Allan Lyngsø Madsen from LO, Cheføkonom, and Mikkel Høegh, our colleague from the Tænketanken EUROPA. If you could just find a place down there. Yeah, sit here. You sit in the middle or you sit? Now, in order to get into a discussion also with our participants here, I'd like you to be as brief as possible. Welcome to you all, first of all, and thanks for coming. But maybe you would be interested in just having a few minutes to go over your initial reactions, and then we can take the discussion from there. So, and as you'll have to wait, because you're going to respond to all the kind of things that are coming now. Philip, would you like to kick off?
Sure. Thanks very much for the opportunity. And first of all, apologies for the first minute being economics talk, and then I will go to something different. So the first
one minute.
Okay. So just on a methodological issue, and also as you already mentioned, there is a heated debate on how this can be done. What are the issues if one actually does this type of exercise towards identifying growth gains from the single market? Then we have an issue here that is not at all clear that this type of integration index, as is applied in your study, is not an homogeneous item. So that basically you might end up in your regression having on the left and the right hand side the same type of variable. That's a methodological issue that has been addressed in the background studies. I don't want to dwell on that, but it matters because all studies to date that try to measure the benefits and gains from European integration have the same issue. We do not know what the correct counterfactual is. And I'm claiming that we're actually overestimating the counterfactual case and hence underestimating the true gains from European integration. I think this is, if anything, then your study is a lower bound estimate of what actually has been gained. Just to exemplify one of the issues that is missing, if you as economists explain growth, then you usually figure capital, labor input, and then the magic A, where you put in knowledge and all the rest. And a lot of the channels that we try to identify in these type of studies end in A, and we are virtually blind as economists trying to identify those. So what does it sum up to? One variable I think that is highly important to understand what Europe has been doing, what the single market has been doing for European economies, is institutional quality. We know from economic development studies that institutional quality is a prime driver to explain growth. Now, none of the studies today actually account for the fact that Europe imposes institutional quality in terms of institutional discipline. You cannot do really weird institutional setups. We are copying mainstream tools, and all these factors are ignored. So if I have one punchline, then I think we are looking at a lower bound estimate of the true impact of the single market for European economies.
Let's see if you can do strange things. We watch carefully what's going on in Greece. You might get an example there. We will see. And probably not anyway, because there is a certain disciplinary effect of being into that framework as well. Let's move to Allan Lyngsø Madsen. You are coming from the trade unions, and I don't know if that flavors your perspective here, but you're a chief economist in CEO Industry, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, the opportunity to discuss how to get the most out of the single market. Just one brief comment on your presentation. I wondered about the index. How's that being calculated? Because I was just making a brief note going on Denmark was at the lower end compared to Belgium, Germany, and the UK. I don't think, in my view on this topic, that's correct. But so, if you could elaborate on the calculations in terms of the economic integration index, that would be helpful. And then I will make comments in more general at this beginning in terms of how to get the most out of the single market. I think it's very important to stress at the beginning that CEO Industri is, of course, very keen on the single market. We see the single market as a cornerstone of economic growth, cornerstone of job creation in the EU. So, as was convincingly shown earlier by Bertelsmann, Denmark has indeed benefited, well, most of them, compared to Germany and other countries. So, my conclusion is crystal clear. We must strengthen the single market further. CEO Industri therefore welcomes the European Commission's wish to expand the single market. Well, as you all know, Denmark is a small open economy, and one of the major barriers for Denmark when it comes to attract foreign investment is exactly being a small domestic market. So, we look at the single market as an obvious platform for expanding, seeing it as a great importance, great opportunity for Danish companies to move on to global markets. So not only the single market, but outside the single market, as Paul mentioned earlier at the beginning. We don't only have a single market within, but we are also open outwards. So it was briefly mentioned that we don't have the same support to the single market among employees as earlier. So just to mention, before we become too hypnotized by all these numbers and all the benefits, a study showed that in October last year, 37% of Danes saw the single market as positive or very positive if you consider the advantages as a whole. A year earlier, the number was 56. I think that's very important to keep in mind, because if Danes, and I guess it applies to other EU member countries as well, they have more reservations. I think it's could be a stone in the shoe on the way to expand the single market and other larger EU projects as well. And if we just go deeper, I think it's important to bear in mind as well that people with education, people with a university degree, they are positive, very positive, whereas people being unemployed, people on sickness leave or whatever, they are not as positive. So, seen from employee side, it's very important to bear in mind, to stress that. So, perhaps it's not a great surprise, because if we take economic theory, the research results as well, we find that there are gains shown in terms of specialization, economies of scale, but the distribution is not equal. So, along the way, some may lose their jobs. This transition is very important. How do we handle the transition? Because it's typically unskilled workers that are lost out in this competition. So, just here, let me end by saying that it's important that we reap these wealth gains, but we have to bear in mind that the population is not as positive as we could hope, and perhaps it's not a big surprise given that we have had an economy that has been stagnant now for more than 5 years. It applies to Denmark, and it applies to other EU member countries as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we can agree that everybody likes the EU because in any case we have somebody to blame for whatever goes wrong, right? So it is part of this whole blame game. But I think there was also one thing you didn't say, and that is that amongst the 4 freedoms in the internal market, there's one in particular that now makes trouble all over the place, and that's the free movement of labor. I mean, we can't hide it, and we will discuss it also during the day, and I think it has quite an impact on the changing figures, as you were saying, but they are dramatic and not very positive, in particular in regard of the conclusion we had here. The way forward is more internal market rather than less. Mikkel?
Yes, thank you. In Tænketanken EUROPA, we have been doing a review study of some of the economic literature who was trying to estimate the value of the single market, to be sure that this result from Bertelsmann wasn't a statistical outlier. We have been looking on exposed studies, we have been looking on studies with historic data, we have been looking at studies which are looking forward, and the results are quite remarkable. All studies show a significant positive gain from the economic integration in the single market. Some bigger than others, and I'm quite sure that the Bertelsmann's results here is at the lower bound. Some of the highest I have been seen has shown that we could lift GDP in Europe by around 12%. So it's a huge spread of a result, I would say. Our studies show that the historic studies have smaller but significant gains.
and the study moving forward had quite larger effects, but it has also a wider statistical spread. None of these studies is about Denmark, but Denmark is actually mentioned quite often in these studies, and I think it's because Denmark has a huge gains, and it's pretty sure that we have, if you look on economic integration and the single market, if you take the single economic integration in the study, as Bertelsmann has done, you get often higher results. And I think it's something about the valuta regime and so on that gives some of these results. The conclusion of all review studies is that Europe could gain a permanent rise in GDP on average about 5 to 8%, which is quite significant. It's much more significant than the investment plans by somebody younger. A rise in GDP in that level could create around 6 to 10 million jobs. And we do not know how much about how these gains are distributed around Europe. But if you say that they are equally distributed as when we take order in the different sizes of the economy, it means that Denmark can create around 80 to 125,000 new jobs by better implementation of the single market. It's quite a lot in a period where we have a lot of economic stagnations. So we think that we need more knowledge about how these gains are coming and how we can make an even better single market. But we think that some of the gains can be harvested by an energy union, a better digital single market, a capital union, even a bank union, and then some of the hard thing to do is better and smarter regulation.
Sounds a little bit like the agenda of the present commission, but it has been striking to listen to economists here basically agreeing that spending the money together makes us all richer. And then contrast that, for example, to the summit meeting in 2012, where the heads of state and government was competing on who could get the biggest rebates and spending as little as possible. And whenever there's growth plans, there's not really any support to Europe 2020, to Europe plan of what do I know, but rather we'd like to spend the money at home. But it seems actually that there is a big discrepancy between you guys, the economists, and the way the politicians act. But Andreas, I think you survived. You didn't get a lot of criticism on your study. That's probably because it's a good one. But there was a question or two. Maybe you'd like to comment.
There was a technical question. I would dare to react on that because I'm not capable of answering the technical detailed questions. Either you ask things or we leave it the way. I think it wasn't challenged in the way that you say. The results you produce are significantly wrong. They maybe even higher than this if you approach it in a different way. And there are some doubts whether we kind of undervalue Denmark. So but you're already number one. So where do you want to go? I think you got all we could give you basically. If it's all economy, that's like this famous economy is stupid, then we could all go home. I mean, and it's easy. I think we all agree, and usually all economists agree. So why are we here? This is not a representative group, because usually if you speak about a topic like this to an audience, there is a significant number of people who are waving their heads, who sit there like this, who kind of oppose any argument you might bring in favor of, I would say, something, not just the European Union, but almost anything. So what is behind this is, I think, there's a big kind of structural whatever uncertainty, which is driving this kind of fundamental general skepticism. So therefore, this is something we have to attack. And studies like these are not, the purpose of these studies is not to improve the state of economic science. This was not what we have in mind. Rather than give arguments to this important cause. That is the idea. But we know about the shortcomings even of such a thing, because it's only reaching a certain certain kind of section of people, and the others we won't. Not with anything like this. So what helps? I mean, why do we think it's important, internal market? Among other things, among the classical trade theory things, it imposes structural change. It imposes what we think as economists is a good thing, what political and social side is a difficult thing to handle, to come up with. We all know that unless the Greeks or the Greek will not manage their productivity issues, will not become more competitive, there will be no kind of ground to improve the situation. And we know at the same time what is an economic truth is a social, political, whatever kind of problem. So the question, how do we get out of most of it? Yes, first of all, keep it. I mean, do everything what we have to keep it. To kind of organize the information, and by that try to kind of keep at least enough people convinced that this is a good thing. In brackets, there has been a poll in Germany in autumn last year about the euro membership. At least there were three out of 4 Germans who were still in favor of the euro. I would have thought that it was less. So at least we should keep it like this. I mean, and I think this applies also for the other thing. This is also important for expectation. I mean, if we look at it from the economic side, it's all about expectations. And this whole uncertainty also kind of moves into the economic sector, that people start to doubt whether this internal market will go on, whether the kind of openness or openness to the idea of an open market is still valid for Europe. I mean, we have this discussion about TTIP, and we're pretty much involved in that. If you want to kind of provoke hostile reactions to anything you say, then you just have to raise the word TTIP in German. Though it's for an economist, again, a pretty easy thing to say, okay, that's a good thing. I mean, for every move you do in any kind of field, you have to watch your step, and maybe okay, once you walk, that you have to make sure that there are no losers. But this is all can cover for all of that, and it's still a good thing. But the general mood is switching, so it's up to us economists. It's up to this kind of discussion groups, and I'm not sure whether we do everything to provide this kind of information. But I'm doubtful whether we can get rid of the problem. I think we will all have this discussion for the time being.
Thank you, Andreas. To those that don't know what TTIP is, it is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which is around the same balance as I talked about before, the balance between free market and regulation. So there's good news and bad news, but as you say, the debate, particularly in Germany, the good news, the economic gains are not very present in the debate. It's all about we don't want this, we don't want that. Right? Now, I didn't hear what you said, but perfectly not necessary. But you were saying some other things. There's nobody in this room who would be against it, nobody doing like this. Let's see, because I'm now going to turn to you. Would anybody like to go into the debate? I'm run out of questions, so you have to. Would you also introduce yourself, name and affiliation?
I'm Andreas Esche from the Danish Consumer Council. Of course, it's one can only be pleased to hear that we have all gained from the single market, and especially that Denmark has gained, and I think it's true. But I was a little bit more surprised about the introductory conclusion of the study that increased integration will always lead to economic growth. I think I had read a recent study of the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, that showed that it has actually cost jobs in the United States. And I also think when we talk about the TTIP, as you just mentioned, that the most optimistic prognosis about the job creation is that it will be very, very small. Actually,
within the uncertainty margin, so it's impossible to say whether there will be any or not. Some other results even points to a negative effect, but the point is, I think it's very uncertain what the result will be. So I just want to make sure if you will say that when you say increased integration will always lead to economic growth, whether that will only be true when we talk about more single market in Europe, or whether you will extend the argument to a more global point of view, and my opinion is that will be doubtful. Thank you.
Can I add just one point to that? Maybe you can take that into consideration, because the more economic integration you have, the more it will become clear that you have winners and losers. You probably have to give up the things that you are not so good at. So is this also about the flexibility in the economy, whether you take the advantage or not? I mean, are you very rigid? If you don't want to change anything, will you then be a loser? Question. We can take one more, perhaps, if there is. Yes.
Hello, my name is Henrik Fogman. I'm retired, but I used to spend most of my life on these issues. There was one thing in the chart over the integration index that struck me. Why does it rise suddenly for the UK from 2007? So rather speedy.
Yeah, I'd like to know that as well. Who would like to answer? Is it you first, Andreas?
That's nice, especially to the first one.
Yeah,
I think if you ask an economist, or let's say 98% of the economists who could tell you that for economic growth, there is no kind of positive case to kind of restrict economic exchange, whether it's trade, whether it's people moving, whether it's all kind of integration. I don't see any benefit from that. That's not saying that if you do it, that you don't have to kind of adjust yourself and that you have to do something in order to adjust. The question is, where would you end if you avoid adjustment? Avoid adjustment by not just letting it happen, or avoid adjustment by letting it happen and let people alone. So, and this is the issue, I think, we're talking about. And this goes back to all the different arguments in favor or against things like TTIP. Whether it's consumer protection, it's the same thing. It's the idea in itself doesn't say anything that is necessarily bad for consumer protection, not at all. You can take care of that, but you have to. What is underlying, I think, is that as an economist, I would say there is always a need to apply structural changes to your society, to your economy, whatever. Tying yourself into the greater world helps you doing that. It doesn't help you. It helps you to allow for structural change, which is a good thing from my perspective, which is a bad thing if you don't take care and if you don't kind of manage it and do something about it. The second question is the UK question. I'm helpless, I cannot tell you.
Do you notice, because it coincides actually with the change from Labour to Conservative, and it looks strange to me, but yeah, I see you looking into your
Yes,
and, you will email us the results afterwards. You don't have an immediate comment?
Maybe the only explanation is that there is a similar development in the business cycle due to the crisis. So we can see that during crisis time, the UK economy has similar development to the rest of the European Union. But as I mentioned before, we did not analyze the drivers of integration. So we talked to brokers because we were asked this question before and we have no better answer.
At least from reading the news, I didn't get the impression that they suddenly became more EU enthusiastic. But I think we will, if you get an answer, let us know.
Yeah.
Philipp.
On the first point, I think this is it's a drama. It's sad for economics as a profession that we after 250 years still are not able to convince thinking men that integration is a good thing. Because it literally is so simple to draw the case that we are unable to communicate it properly. I will try once more why integration is a good thing. Would any one of you wish that we, instead of working on personal computers, work on typewriters again? Probably not. Yet again, thousands of people in the typewriting industry were sent into unemployment. Thousands of typists were sent into unemployment due to the emergence of the personal computer. On balance, it's still a good thing that we got this, right? The exact same argument holds for economic integration. Unfortunately, a lot of the gains, and Alan brought it up already, is the distributional issue, but there's even more to it. There are winners and losers, but even more to it. The real problem is that the gains are so thinly spread out. In your estimation of the total GDP gains, what is invisible is that what the single market really has done, it has led to incredible pro-competitive effects, which means higher competition among firms, which means lower prices. Now, if you lower the prices in Europe across the board, which has happened, GDP falls, right? Because GDP is output times price. So we are in the blind version, we don't see this huge benefit. In sensitive sectors, you see price reductions 4, 5, 6%, just as a direct response to increased integration from the single market program. These are big gains to the average European. The average European just doesn't notice them. So if there are losers in European integration and any economic integration, the only real losers are the onlookers. The onlookers are the potential losers. Whoever participates in integration, in trade, in barter, gains. But it needs, as already has been pointed out, what it needs is a society that is quick on its feet, so it can adjust to these changes, just as we had to adjust to the exit of typewriters and the advent of personal computers.
Yeah.
I would just add that it's important to establish what is the counterfactual when you make these kinds of exercises. And that is a tough question to answer. So, how do we adjust to structural change? I would say, literally speaking, members of CEO industry are, I would say, pioneers when it comes to structural adjustment. And what we're talking about here today is now other sectors, they are on the verge of getting on this train. So, if we take the American case, or we take the single market case in the EU, I would say to reap the benefits of open borders, the key issue is to have a highly skilled workforce, to have a flexible labor market, where you have the ability to adjust, just as Phil mentioned. So, skills, flexibility. So that's the two key words when we're talking about social adjustment.
Which also means upgrading skills from the typewriters to the computer, right? Yeah. Mikkel, would you like to ask a question?
I'm not sure that I can add further, but I think it's quite obvious that when you have these distributional effects, the losers is very, what you say, it's easy to find them in the statistics, where the winner is often quite hard to find, and that's why we have these debates, I think.
Andreas, you get the last word here.
Yeah.
And everyone you say will keep from the coffee break, remember that.
No, but you would like to hear it. From a German perspective, I mean, we almost get bored, because if we give people award to something, this usually goes to Scandinavia, very often to Denmark, because people there are all these kind of things you just mentioned, high skill and pragmatic and social and all that. This is assembled in Scandinavia and also in Denmark. So you are best prepared to take care of these things and to be able to do structural change and at the same time maintain social stability. And I think this is, for many of us, this is a huge challenge, to do this in a pragmatic way and to combine this with knowledge and with action. And here you are, if you look for reasons why you're on top also on this scale, I think this is basically fine. So that was it.
In other words, integration will create growth, but you need to work to get a part of it. And you need to work hard, and you need to be flexible to grab the opportunities. I think that was a very fine end message here. I'd like to thank from that end there, Allan, Mikkel, Philipp, and Andreas for coming here, and also for you, Thiess. I know you have to leave now, so thank you very much for this. Let's give them a hand in a second, but I just want to announce the coffee break. We should be back in 15 minutes from now, and then we'll begin to discuss the next 20 years. Thank you very much. Thank you.